Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. This is Jesus Meets JD. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about applying for law school, the do's and don'ts, and what to expect. So your law school journey is going to begin on the LSAC website, and that is LSAC, and that is where you're going to register for your LSAT and apply for schools, submit all your paperwork, so like transcripts, letters of recommendation, so on and so forth. So I took my LSAT in February, like 21st or something, and I had placed it that way because I wanted to have the most time to study for my LSAT. There were like multiple days you can choose from, and like there was a January date, but I decided to do the February date, and this kind of put me in a situation because it was gonna mean that my LSAT score wasn't gonna be released till after the application deadline for the majority of the schools I was applying to. So that was scary, but you know, we have faith. And so basically, I was studying throughout this process. So early on, so back in January, I had emailed the people who were going to write my recommendation letters, told them the due date, sent those links out, and additionally I had requested from my university my transcript. I did this incorrectly, and I thought, and I would like 2 weeks went by, no transcript, and then I realized I did the wrong thing, so good thing we caught that on time. So redid that went well. The hardest part, I think, of my application process was my personal statement. I knew what I wanted to write about, but I didn't know how to write about it. I think I wrote like 3 or 4 drafts of it. And if you know me, that is a lot. I'm more of a write and submit type person, like no edits, just vibes, like just vibes. And so I had written my first personal statement, sent it to my friend Toby, and she basically was like, "This is crap," like in the nicest way possible, but she had so much to say about it. And so I was like, okay, back to the drawing board. And I think either I deleted everything, started writing again. I read what I had written, deleted that. I didn't even send it to her because I was like, she's about to hate this. And I went back to my original one, deleted like everything except like 2 paragraphs or a paragraph and a half, and started rewriting from then. So at that point, she gave me some really good edits to write, went through another cycle of like redoing it, and I think then was when it had reached its final form. But it's so important to have people who will edit your stuff and look for questions they can ask you to pull out more, to make you get into the nitty-gritty of what you are talking about. And she really did that for me, even though it was painful and it hurt my feelings, because criticism hurts, but it was so useful. So after like writing that, I had to tailor each like conclusion paragraph to each of the 6 schools I was applying to. That's very important. Schools want to hear that you want them and only them. So they want your application, I mean your personal statement at the end, to kind of like circle back to them in a way, but you don't have to spend too much time talking about them specifically because it's about you. And then came the part of actually filling out the applications. That was pretty easy because since all the applications are on the LSAC website, once you fill out something for one school, it auto populates for the other applications you're filling. I mean, some schools have different categories that other schools don't, so you have like those things you might have to like do separately, but it was pretty easy because completing one auto populates for so many of the other ones. So that was that. And throughout this process, like I was praying like for God's will to be done. And it's really crazy because I applied for 6 schools and 4 of them were in DC, and I had like no business being in DC. Like I did not want to go there whatsoever, but those were the schools I had heard of. And the one school I wanted to really go to, my first choice, was out of my LSAT range that I ended up getting, and out of like, it was just like way above like any of my scores, which really has to do with the grace of God, period. But yeah, and so I had submitted my applications before the deadline, taking my test, and now it was just a waiting game of when my score was gonna get released, and when like the schools were gonna get back to me saying like my application was truly completed. But during this time, I was just praying like for God's will to be done. It's so funny because when I ended up getting into Emory, the day before, I had a panic attack because I was like, OMG, like, what if I don't get into Emory? Like, what am I gonna do with my life? And in that moment, I was like, wow, like, Hilda, like, you want this too much. Like, you want to go here to, like, you're not leaving space for God's will to be done. And I called myself, I had prayed, and I'm like, Lord, whatever happens, I'm not going to be upset because I know that your will for me is greater than everything I have planned for myself. And literally the next day, my acceptance letter came. That's just a little short story I wanted to give. But trusting God, like, is real. Having faith is real. And being ready to seriously yield your plans to His will. It takes faith, and it's something you have to grow to do. Like, to really understand that, like, Lord, even when you feel yourself wanting something like too much that you're not leaving space for the will of God, like, it's time like to do some praying, because you don't ever want to be in a place where you want something so bad that when you're hearing from God and God telling you to go somewhere, you're like in a fight and a tug of war with Him because you can't release your own plans for yourself. The main takeaways I got from it was planning. Make sure that you're taking your LSAT in enough space so that your score will get there before the application deadline. Because when I was calling the schools, they were literally telling me like, oh, I mean, we may get to you, we may look at your application, but if your LSAT is coming after the fact, we can't promise you anything. But good thing, my God is bigger than that. But yeah, so planning, make sure like you're doing that ahead of time. You're hitting up like your teachers, your professors ahead of time so they don't have to rush to give you a great letter of recommendation. And also you're starting your personal statement ahead of time too, and you're ready to put in the time and effort it takes to make good edits so you can produce the best piece of work you can to submit to those schools. But I hope this was helpful. Thank you as always for tuning into my channel. If y'all want some in-depth LSAT application tips and tricks and guidelines, please let me know. Please press the bell to get notifications for when I release more videos. But this has been GS Meets JD, and I will see y'all next week.